The Supreme Court denied a Republican effort to nullify President-elect Joe Biden's win in Pennsylvania late Tuesday afternoon. It's one of several legal efforts launched by President Trump's campaign and allies. Another is in Texas, where the Attorney General is suing to contest election results in 4 battleground states that helped swing the race for President-elect Biden. Republican Ken Paxton is suing Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He claims their expansion of voting access due to the pandemic violated federal law. Paxton is now asking the U.S. Supreme Court to block the states from voting in the Electoral College count next week. CBS News campaign reporter Adam Brewster joins me now with more. He covers Texas, Michigan, and Wisconsin for our political unit. Hi there, Adam. Nice to see you again. So these 4 states were not the only ones to change their election procedures because of the pandemic. Texas extended their early voting period by a week. So why is Paxton focused on these 4, and why a month after the election?
In Texas also, Elaine, you might remember, it changed their rules to allow for people to turn in absentee ballots by hand. They did not expand access to absentee voting, but they did allow people to hand deliver those ballots for a longer period than usual. Now, these 4 states are 4 of these states that we've seen at the center of litigation from the president and his allies. And as you mentioned in the introduction, the president and his supporters and allies have had very little success in court in their efforts to try to overturn the election in both these 4 states and a couple of other states out west, Arizona and Nevada. So you can see, how these 4 states were 4 of the ones that were picked by Attorney General Ken Paxton. But one of the other issues that comes with it is, when you get to look at the changes that were made in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, access to voting by mail was around before the pandemic even happened. Wisconsin has long had no excuse absentee voting. Michigan voters changed the law in 2018, a constitutional amendment on the ballot by a 2/3 to 1/3 mark to allow for anyone to vote absentee without an excuse. And in Pennsylvania, the state legislature passed that law last year, again, long before anyone knew there was a pandemic coming. So there might be some questions about the timing of this and the fact that these were rules that could have been challenged beforehand as opposed to waiting until after the election was done.
So based on that and based on your reporting, does it appear that this case has a chance at proceeding?
So I spoke to our CBS News election law expert, David Becker, and he said there is a less than 0% chance that this ends up at the Supreme Court. He said that they take up this case. He seemed to think that there was no merit to it. There were a lot of legal deficiencies and would be, in his view, quite an infringement on states' rights. Now, the Supreme Court is the place where disputes between states are settled, so you can see why Attorney General Paxton went there. The comparison that David Becker, our election law expert, made said, this has about as much merit, possibly less merit, than Florida suing California, saying that the Tampa Bay Rays had won the World Series instead of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and asking the Supreme Court to weigh in on that. So in his view, and in the view of many other election experts out there, this case doesn't have much of a chance, if any, of being picked up by the United States Supreme Court. Some have pointed out that Attorney General Paxton has faced investigations in recent years for conduct.
Well, what are the officials from the states being sued saying?
So the attorneys generals from the 4 states have all come out, and that includes 3 Democrats in the upper Midwest, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. They put out a joint statement that said, in part, these insignificant attempts to disregard the will of the people in our 3 states misleads the public and tears at the fabric of our Constitution. Georgia's Republican Attorney General came out and also dismissed this lawsuit, saying it wasn't credible and challenged the constitutionality of it. The attorneys generals in the Midwest also put out their own individual statements. One notably from Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul said Texas has about as much chance of overturning the election in Wisconsin as it does of overturning the results of the Ice Bowl. For those unfamiliar, that refers to a late 1960s NFL championship between the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys, in which the Packers beat the Cowboys.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clearing that up. Meantime, Adam, Michigan State Senate Oversight Committee questioned Detroit elections advisor Chris Thomas, who ran the state's elections for nearly 4 decades until 2017. What did we learn from that hearing this morning?
So Thomas is a highly respected election official, served in Michigan, as you mentioned, for decades under several secretaries of state, both Republican and Democrat. And he sort of provided a counter narrative to some of what we saw from testimony in the state legislature last week. The Senate held a hearing last week where there was hours of testimony, nearly all of it from the Republican side, about irregularities they claim to have seen at the TCF Center in Detroit, which is where the city counted its absentee ballots. Of course, the following day, you had Rudy Giuliani in the Michigan House having that hearing where he was questioning witnesses who have also provided affidavits in court. And today was a chance. Thomas spoke for hours. He took questions from the senators. They asked him about things like chain of custody of ballots. He sort of debunked some of the narratives that have been out there about ballots that arrived in the middle of the night, the quantity of those, where they came from, some of these conspiracy theories that have gone out about machines and tabulators being connected to the internet. And Thomas said that that was something that was not true, and ballots being run through tabulators many times. That's something that we saw a witness who testified in the Senate and the House last week come out and say, and said that she saw ballots being counted multiple times. And Thomas noted that that would have thrown off the poll book by hundreds of votes. And that's just not something that you saw in the city of Detroit. And he said that's just one of those examples of someone not understanding the processes that they were seeing, and said that there just simply wasn't evidence of that happening. So it was a different narrative than we saw projected last week during hours of hearings in the Michigan Senate and the Michigan House from somebody who has worked in elections for a long time. His affidavits in courts have been deemed credible. Many of the challengers who have put affidavits in court have come out and, judges have said that they didn't believe that those people were understanding the processes that they were seeing. As Chris Thomas said today, just because somebody puts it in an affidavit doesn't make it true. So he was out there to try to counter some of the misinformation that has spread in Michigan in the wake of the election process. And he noted some improvements that need to be made. Hiring more Republican election workers in Detroit was something that he talked about wanting to see more of. And he said it wasn't a perfect election, but it was a darn good election, and one that he said that he was proud to have been a part of, and he thinks the process went really well.
All right, really interesting stuff. Adam Brewster, keeping track of it all, our indefatigable CBS News campaign reporter. Thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Elaine.